now, right now, we're going to, I'm going to step back and let Carolina take the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Larissa. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am Carolina Chia. I am a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. And now I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this works. To give you more information about the the 2020 census. This is my information. If you'd like to get in touch with me, that's my email address and my phone number. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, great, it's working. So the U.S. Census Bureau is the largest statistical agency in the U.S. It's the leading source of quality data about the nation's people, places, and economy, conducting more than 130 Census Bureau surveys and programs. So a lot of people, back when we were out in the world and I was doing these presentations, so many people would get excited and tell me, oh, I've already filled out my census. Well, I'm here to explain that the Census Bureau has over 130 Census Bureau surveys, and the decennial census, which is what I'm here to talk about today, is just one of them. A lot of people have already filled out their American Community Survey by the time I had given those presentations, so there's a lot of confusion. The decennial census happens every 10 years. The American Community Survey happens every year. So the American Community Survey asks you a lot more questions. The census questionnaire has only 9 questions. So that's one thing I wanted to make clear. There's a website. Everything and anything that I speak about on the census can be found on census.gov. Throughout my presentation, there are going to be several links that you can go into and explore a little bit more. And of course, I'm here to answer any of your questions. So the 2020 census, we're here to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. We have an increasingly diverse and growing population, 330 million people in the US, over 140 million housing units. The census is mandated by Article 1, Section 2 of the US Constitution. We've been conducting this since 1790, as I mentioned, every 10 years, every year ending in 0. And the outcome, it gives us representation and funding. So if you remember anything about what I tell you today, the census is safe, easy, and important. Safe, easy, and important. Why is it so important? The census, the results determine the number of seats each state has in the U.S. House of Representatives. It defines congressional and state legislative districts, school districts, and voting precincts. It determines the annual allocation of over $675 billion in federal funding. This funding goes toward Medicaid, SNAP, highway planning, Section 8 housing, special education grants, Pell grants, CHIP, Title I grants, National School Lunch Programs, WIC, Head Start, foster care, and health center programs, just to name a few. It provides insight to governments, business, and community planning groups for planning purposes. And it provides benchmarks for nearly every other United States survey. It's safe. Every bit of information that is provided to the U.S. Census stays with the Census Bureau. Private information is never published, including names, addresses. That includes GPS coordinates, social security numbers, or telephone numbers. The Census Bureau collects information only to produce statistics. Personal information collected by the U.S. Census Bureau cannot be used against respondents by any government agency or court. U.S. Census Bureau employees are sworn to protect confidentiality for life, and violating the federal law, Title 13, is a serious federal crime. Violators are subject to severe penalties, including a federal prison sentence of up to 5 years, a fine of up to $250,000, or both. So basically, all that to say, the Census Bureau cannot, under federal law, share any of your information with anybody else. That includes state, local, federal agencies, includes your landlord, includes anybody, your neighbor, anybody. So responding to the 2020 census. There are 4 ways to respond. You can go online, you can call, you can wait for your paper questionnaire if you haven't gotten it yet, or you can wait until we're out and a personal visit by a census employee. Someone will come to your home and help you fill it out. What will we be asking? Your name, your age, your date of birth, race and origin, Hispanic origin, relationship to the person filling out the census questionnaire, if there are more of you in your home, more than one, your sex, your tenure, your operational questions, pop count, name, phone number, overcount, undercount. So that's all we ask, 9 simple questions for each person that lives in your home. We will never ask you for your social security number, money or donations, anything on behalf of a political party, and we will not ask you for your bank account or credit card account numbers. This time around, this is the first time since the history of the census, 1790, that we've been doing this, that you can go online to fill it out, or you can call. When you go online and when you call, there's language support. So you can do this, you can fill out your survey in English and 12 other non-English languages: Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Russian, Arabic, Tagalog, Polish, French, Haitian Creole, Portuguese, and Japanese. You can also call and fill out your census, and then you can do this in your language. So there's different phone numbers for each specific language, as you can see on your screen. So language guides, again, like I said before, there are several links on this presentation that you can go back into since it's being recorded to explore more information about what I'm telling you. The language guides, if, for example, someone is you're going to be helping, let's say, someone who doesn't speak English and you don't speak their language, you can go in and see that there's language guides that go step by step in 59 other languages, and you can help them by going step by step, asking them they'll know what question is being asked in their own language. This is a little outdated, but the one important thing to focus on here is paper questionnaires will be mailed out through the end of April. Okay, so if you haven't received your paper questionnaire and you are one of those people that likes to do it on paper, you will be receiving it by the end of April. So again, the census is safe, easy, and important. Please share the message. I know there are several initiatives about getting everybody counted. There's a phone tree. You can, if you've already filled out your census, call and challenge somebody else to do so, 5 more people to do so. They can do it online, they can do it on the phone, or they can wait for their paper questionnaire. Census jobs, everybody's already applied for. That's what enumerators will be making. There's positions for recruiting assistants, field supervisors, and operations supervisors. There are several videos, there are several toolkits, there's sample intro letters, media buys. There's so many tools out there on census.gov that you can use to promote the census, especially via social media. So upcoming initiatives, these are all outdated. We're already past April 1st. But again, the main thing here is you can go online or over the phone. One important thing that we do have now that everybody can go online to check is the response rates. So for Ridgewood, since we're talking about Ridgewood Library, you can go on to the census.gov and search for response rates map. You can see that we have response rates in real time. They're only about 2 days behind. So these rates are as of Saturday. Ridgewood is at 71.7%. New Jersey is at a 54.7% of self-response. Now Ridgewood has 5 tracts. So if you want to see how your area of where you live in Ridgewood is doing, tract 471 has a 77.3% self-response rate. Tract 472 has a 73.5% self-response rate. Tract 473 has a 75.4% self-response rate. Tract 474 has a 58.3 self-response rate. And Tract 475 has a 77.3 self-response rate. You can connect with us via any and all social media platforms. And if you'd like to call and get in touch with the partnership program or the U.S. Census Bureau, you can do so as well. If you have any questions, I'll be here throughout the presentation to be able to answer your questions. Thank you so much. Let me hand you my screen.
Thank you very much, Carolina. And so now we will move to Dennis and Brian. I don't think we can, yeah, let's see. They're the wrong, yes, there we go. There's my lovely basement.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Carolina. It's great to see that breakdown of the tracks in Ridgewood, that there are some areas that have a higher response rate, some areas that don't, but it helps us understand what's, where we can focus our work too.
Ridgewood is doing really well. So you guys go Ridgewood.
So yes, not as great as Glen Rock maybe, but yes, getting up there. So now, thank you so much, Carolina. So we'll move over to Dennis and to Dennis Nyland and to Brian Downey of the Bergen and Passaic Department of Consumer Affairs to talk more specifically about fraudulent activity. Thank you very much. And I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Nyland. I'm an investigator for Division of Consumer Affairs. I've been there for about 5 years. I'm a retired police officer from Paramus, and I'm with my partner.
Hi, I'm Brian Downing. I've been with the department for just a year. I'm a retired sergeant for the Bergen County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, we're going to share our screen. We got a little PowerPoint. We're going to cover some of the stuff on the economic impact payments, census, COVID-19, and some of the scams related along with them. So let's see. That full screen? No. Oh, something happened. Lost my control board. Hold on. Is it full screen?
No, not yet. We're seeing your screen, but we're not seeing it in PowerPoint mode.
No?
No.
Okay, hold on.
Maybe if you go to slideshow at the top there.
There you go. You got it.
Never mind.
The delay. Okay, we work under the Bergen County Executive and Freeholders, so they bring this program and other programs to the public. If you ever want a program, you're welcome to call our office. 3 functions we do: investigations, enforcement, and education, and this is part of our education portion. We don't want to go into stats too much, but we want to just point out a couple things. Some of the biggest scams are the imposter scams. And down here, the people that get scammed the most are the younger people. But as you get older, you have a golden egg. You're saved a lot of money, and the higher losses are with elderly people. New Jersey ranks about 19th in the United States for scams and frauds. A lot of the frauds where the biggest money is lost, wire transfers, where people get talked into sending money on the phone, or the scam originates from the phone. But we want you to be alert, and we're going to talk about some of the things to be alert. Brian, you have anything?
No, most of the time when like you said, Dennis, the younger people get hacked more often, but the financial gains are much more prevalent with the older people. And again, they also play on the emotions of the older people, again, with the urgency that, you know, a loved one is in trouble. It has to be done now. You know, they play on your emotions, keep you off balance. And a lot of times in the senior population, they try to get them to do it right away before they can call a family member or double check on things, because they want it done now. The urgency of they're in trouble and they need it now. And of course, again, we all want to help our family.
Census goes back thousands of years, but here's a little copy of what they used to call a badge. Now they have an ID badge that's made of plastic. And this is actually a census from my family going back to Ireland in 1901 area. But like was said before, and we want to reiterate on it, they will never ask you for your Social Security number. They won't ask you for money, donations, nothing political, no bank information, no credit card information, no citizenship status. They're going to ask you basic questions. How many people are living in your house? Is your house owned or rented? Sex of the people in the house, relationship of each person in the house, and ethnic background. This is going to end by the end of 2020. And like was said before, the end of April marks a change where they'll start to come out in the field and go to houses. So you always have to keep up your guard and be alert. So their badge or their ID tag, like's on the screen, has to have their name, their photograph, Department of Commerce watermark, and an expiration date. They'll also be carrying some type of electronic device to take the information, and they'll be carrying a bag. It says census on it. They won't come no later than 9 p.m. and no earlier than 9 a.m. So if you have somebody and you're not sure that the person's legit and you want to follow up on it, you could call this number, 844-330-2020, and you'll be able to speak with somebody and verify that this person is real. You could tell them to wait outside, shut the door. You could tell them, I'm going to verify this. If they're a bad guy, they're gonna leave. If they're a legitimate census worker, they'll take the time to wait outside while you verify it. Also in the mail, because there are a lot of frauds in the mail too, make sure it's from Jeffersonville, Indiana. And also, if you get an email and you think it's suspicious, where it's not the census, there's a forwarding address here to just forward that email and say why you think it's suspicious. It's important that you get involved if you see something wrong, because it may help somebody else out. Also, we have the what's called the stimulus package, but that's not its real name. So if anybody offers you a check and says, oh, this is the stimulus check here, it's not called that. It's called the economic impact payment. So, and that is written on the check. I'll show you an example of the check in a minute. But you're going to get up to $1,200 per adult, $500 per qualifying kid or child under 17. And if you haven't received your payment, so far they've done the direct deposit, and you want to research it, there's a link that says get my payment. I listed it on the front page of our Consumer Affairs website. That's www.bergenpassaicconsumeraffairs.com. And in the bottom right, there's links to the census, to get my payment.
You can also check your status of your payment there too.
Yes. I was researching this, came up yesterday. when you'll get your payment if it's a paper check. Most people should have got their electronic payments. And if you filed your taxes last year or the year before, you should be eligible to get it. And also some people that don't file are eligible to get it. And you could find out by using that link. See in the bottom left of the check, it says economic impact payment, President Donald Trump. And also the seal, if you wet the seal, it looks black, but it'll start to be red around it when it gets moist. If you hold it up to the light, you'll be able to see the watermarks through the actual check. For some reason, the Secret Service put out a warning to be alert in case, I guess, false checks go out there that would go back to somebody that's imitating the government, and they'd be able to get your checking account number. So take a good look at the check. Watermarks and things are very hard to copy. Just hold it up to the light, make sure that those things are in place. And if you doubt it, you could wet that seal a little, you'll see it run a little red. As of April 15th, there were 18,235 complaints over the coronavirus. And some of these are through phishing, robocalls, imposter scams, and travel and vacations. What you got to do is decide, who is this message from? What do they want you to do? And what evidence supports the message? So slow down the process, think about what's going on. Because all too often we jump and make a decision quickly. For instance, if you get a text that says you are believed to have COVID-19, and there's a link on the text, don't click on the link. This is an example of something that really was happening.
Yeah, and a lot of times you have to go back and remember, have you been tested? How is someone telling you that you now have it? How have you connected to it? You know, a lot of times if you just take a second to think about it before you act, you'll realize, well, wait a minute, I've never been tested. I never went to my doctor. I don't know what's going on. So you realize that this is a fraudulent email. And a lot of times they're just baiting you into clicking it so they can get you into wherever they want you to be and try to steal your information.
Okay, state of emergency that we're presently in with price gouging becomes tricky sometimes. The law is written no more than 10% higher than the price of which the merchandise was sold during normal course of business. Now, some of these people, after this started, decided to start selling medical products, masks. They were selling them in bagel stores, right? They normally don't sell them there. So with some of the laws, they ran into enforcement problems. They got to update some of the law, but people were selling masks, gloves, face shields, as you know. But Amazon removed over 1 million products where people were scamming people. And then you had the normal person like the guy on the bottom hoarding, and some of these people were reselling on like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, eBay.
We had a lot of,
not only for the virus, hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, and flooding, any type of emergency, but the governor of the state has to declare. Right?
Yeah, we had in the beginning when this first started, when we were all still in the office going out, we had many cases. One of the cases that I had was, it was a little store. It was like a little convenience store. They were selling bleach, and it normally comes in a 3-pack, 3 gallons of bleach. What they were doing was they were buying this 3-pack of bleach for like $13 at, BJ's or Costco or someplace like that. And then they would bring it to their store, break open the package, put the individual gallons on their shelves, and they were selling them for $13 each for each one of them instead of $13 for the three of them. And they thought that that was okay.
I had it too, where they were selling products and they actually had stickers on them. And they took the stickers off. So you would go to the register and they'd just ring it up with everything else. And it was way above the normal price. Also, there's a lot of fake products being sold. There's 25 companies as of last week being investigated in the United States for selling fake products. There is no cure for COVID-19. There is no IVs that will help, no supplements at this point that is backed up and proven. So they were selling bundles of supplements. They were selling antivirus kits, IV therapies, essential oils that they claim that will help. And people are buying these products and getting ripped off. So there is no vaccine at this point. And I guarantee you, everybody will be touting this or talking about it when there is. A lot of times you'll see an advertisement like this where they take the Today Show or Shark Tank and they add it on there like their product is proven and supported by these television shows. Happens with Shark Tank a lot. But this is just another scam. And you say, oh, $4.95, it's free, it's just paying for shipping. No, you're gonna pay the $4.95 and not get anything. We've had it before. This is a regular case I was handling where they stole the face of Walmart. It's called scraping a website, where they scraped the whole front of the website and took their logos off, put up products that were very attractive, and then never mailed any of the products. The address came back to a house in Oakland, New Jersey. It was a vacant property. Also, be careful once you see a product that's cheap. This was on Amazon that I saw. It was a masks for $10.99. Sounds pretty good. Pack of 50, right? You go to the cart, boom, you got to hit the button again. But if you read it carefully, $369 for shipping. So, and by hitting the button, you're agreeing to paying the price. Also, Kentucky, they had a fake test site where people were in high-vet suits with white tents, and they would pull in. They had like a church parking lot they set up in. They would pull in, and they would charge you $240, take all your personal information, and it was all a fake site. As soon as the media showed up, they packed up and left. But they got the people's money, they got their personal information. Robocalls, don't answer the phone. Everybody's not used to being home. There's some people that are home all the time are used to robocalls and they don't answer the phone, but we have everybody is home now. Imposter scams. Brian, you want to talk a little bit?
Sure. A lot of times during this time of the year, especially during tax season and during the census, all these scams seem to roll back out during these times. You have to watch yourself, because again, you'll be getting bombarded with emails and phone calls and things of those natures. And especially like Dennis said, that we're all home now and we're getting them. You just have to back up all the information that someone's telling you. Like a lot of times if they're calling you, if someone's calling you and they have your information, they're not going to ask you for your social security number. They're not going to ask you for your bank number. They have your number. They have your information. If they're your bank, they know your number. If anything, they're going to ask you for the partial of some information. They'll ask you for maybe your birthday, but just the year of your birthday, because they know the rest of it. They may ask you for the last 4 digits of your social. They're not going to ask you for your full social because they already know it. They're basically just reiterating, trying to figure out to prove that this is you and this is them. So if they're calling you and trying to get more information than you think that your bank should already know, that's going to be a bell going off in your head. Well, wait a minute, you're my bank, you're my electric company, you're the organization that I deal with. Shouldn't you know this information? A lot of times you also have to double check with your billing, with medical bills and those things. A lot of us who don't really look at the medical bills when they come in, because they're being paid by insurance. But a lot of times, if you just take the second to look over your bills, you may find, wait a minute, I've never seen a Dr. Green, but yet I'm being charged by this. So someone may have gotten your information, your social or something like that, and they're using your, insurance information or Medicaid or Medicare to defraud a doctor out of money. But again, a lot of us don't pay attention to it. So you just always have to know where the information is coming from and who's asking for it.
Also, too, the IRS extended the filing date to July 15th. But the longer you leave the window open, there's an opportunity for someone to come in and file in your name. And it happens a lot. So it's best that you file at the first opportunity that you can. Also, these technology viruses that pop up or people call, it's a big problem. People make a mistake. They hit you for a couple $100 the first time, and then they're back. They get control of your computer. So you don't want to click on any links. Don't agree to open your computer for anybody. If there's a problem with your computer, you're going to know it. Sample thing, a woman's voice says she's working with Medicare, the National Health Insurance Program, to distribute tests for COVID-19. Disease is caused by coronavirus. All she needed, the woman said, was Lorena's name, address, and Social Security, and Medicare information. Sounds like a legitimate call. It's a fake. And with every disaster, every situation comes charities that aren't registered, that aren't legit. Be careful who you give your money to if you're going to make donations. Make sure it's going to the right cause. This was an example I saw on, we live in Bergen County, on Facebook, a group page. One person put up this unemployment page and another person put theirs up. The other one had a link with an address with newjersey.gov. This was just a link and you don't know where it's going to go. So make sure that you have legitimate paperwork if you're filing or requesting. If someone sends it to you without you asking, then there's reason to be suspicious. Same thing with checks. You get a check and you're not expecting the check, you deposit it. A lot of times they're fictitious, then they're able to get your bank information that it bounced. Identity theft, we basically talked about that, the misuse of your information, whether it's for medical reasons or for financial gain. And identity theft is going up every day. It's like a huge hill. Many different ways that it could get stolen, data breaches, shred your information. These are all ways, burglaries, even shopping. I see people leave their cart with the coupons and the rest of their purse is open where somebody could reach inside. And I always say, don't expect your local police to be able to solve all identity theft problems, because a lot of it is from overseas, especially if it happens in the mail, on the computer. But file a complaint somewhere so it's documented. I know I've had cases where, like, someone got ripped off $29,000, and they sent 29 payments. 28 of them went to the Ukraine. We were able to approve. So I can't go over there and arrest somebody in the Ukraine, neither can your local police, neither can the FBI. So it's important that you at least document and have a starting point so there's a record, and then notify your credit agencies and the appropriate agencies related. And video conferencing, wrapping it up. There's so many different companies out there, so many ways they could be hacked. It's good to use passwords, customize your meeting numbers. If there's encryption with your program or company, use the encryption. Keep your software up to date so nobody hacks into your computer. If you want to protect yourself, turn off your camera if it's not needed to be on. Watch your kids, and this is for kids and adults. And like we said before, slow down the process, safeguard your social security number, talk to family and friends if something happens and you're not sure. It's important that you talk to somebody else, and opt out of pre-approved credit cards, things like that. Destroy documents, we talked about, and protect your passwords. That's it. Do we have any questions?
Okay, sorry, I could not get to the right window quickly enough there, but thank you very much, Dennis and Brian. That was really very helpful. I hope that we can all, I hope that I can avoid all those situations. But also, now we're going to hear from Shanna, who'll talk a little bit about the legal side of this. Thank you so much, Shanna. I'll just step aside now for you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really wonderful, Dennis and Brian. It's great information. So I'm going to share my screen and give you a little bit more. I'm going to focus on financial exploitation, not so much scams, but people who you know and are gonna take information from you. So let's see, where are we? Okay. Put it in slideshow. We should be. Okay, so we find that older adults tend to be most at risk for exploitation. As Dennis and Brian said, there's a lot of scams that impact other people, but when we're talking about the type of exploitation that I'm talking about, we do see that it is mostly focused on older adults. Often this has to do with loneliness and isolation. So when you have individuals who are single or widowed, particularly where there's cognitive impairment, then you're going to see a real opportunity which is being exploited by bad guys. Often you see that this happens when you have individuals who are physically disabled or weak or dependent on others. And again, that's really going to focus on that trust that's being built, the trust relationship that's being built between the perpetrator and the victim, and taking advantage of that trust. As we'll talk about more in a bit, you see that often older individuals will have a little bit of a slower processing speed, which is perfectly normal. This doesn't even have to do with dementia or cognitive impairment. Individuals have a slower processing speed, and that can really result in them having a situation where they're taken advantage of. And then we often see that some individuals have a lack of knowledge about finances. They're not that confident in handling them. Particularly, we find where you have someone who is newly widowed, and maybe their spouse handled all of the financial affairs, and now they're just not experienced in dealing with that, and that can really lead to a situation where they can be taken advantage of. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the warning signs that we see in our practice and that you should watch out for. I've often seen where you have an individual who's showing interest. So, you know, you have a neighbor or a friend who maybe you knew sort of in passing, but is all of a sudden spending a lot more time, being a lot more attentive than they were, stopping by regularly. And that is a situation which could be based on an opportunity to try and build rapport and in order to exploit that relationship. We'll find that often that'll lead to a new friendship and moving over into a romance sometimes. A common story that we see is when the perpetrator talks about their ill wife. And that is an opportunity to both gain sympathy, but also to build a potential for a romantic relationship. How lonely they are, how they're taking care of their wife, they're a caregiver, and this can lead to you know, a relationship which then turns into exploitation. The perpetrators will often ask for a loan. Again, they're giving a tragedy story. So whether it's that ill wife, a sick child, any situation where you've got something that they need a loan, again, emergently. You heard Dennis and Brian referring to that. We need something right away. I need to take care of, there's a surgery that has to happen. There's a flight that I need to pay for. All of these things that need to happen emergently, and that's why we need a loan right away. You might have someone who is asking about your finances where, you know, you didn't have that type of relationship in the past. They were just a neighbor, a very casual friend, and all of a sudden they're now asking more information about you, about, do you own this house? Do you have a retirement account? Those types of questions that there's really no reason for them to need to know that kind of information. As these relationships increase, you may see that you have an individual who promises to take care of you, particularly if you do have some physical needs. And they're talking about how they're going to stop by, they're going to go grocery shopping for you, they're going to do things for you. And of course, that is opening up the opportunities for exploitation. I can't tell you how many clients I have who will allow individuals who they barely know to do their banking or their shopping. And unfortunately, it's really a situation where they're just kind of desperate to have that kind of help that they need. And rather than paying for it, or rather than going through a charitable organization or a government agency, they rely on what they think is the kindness of strangers or of acquaintances. But of course, that opens up the opportunity. I have clients who give over their credit card, give over their bank card, thinking that this person is helping them, but of course, they're really helping themselves to the funds. And if you have anyone who comes to you and asks you to sign a document, they may say that it is something else. I was involved in a case where a man actually had a mortgage taken out on his house that he didn't realize because he signed some paperwork that he didn't look at. And so he trusted the person who was giving him this and was saying that it was something else. And so, you know, he ended up in a lot of trouble. So these are all things to kind of look out for. Additional warning signs. So if you are no longer receiving your bank statements, and that's something that you traditionally did receive, that could be a sign that something's going on, that that funds are being taken out of your accounts. If items are missing from your household, or if you have a loved one and they mention in passing that something is missing from their household, particularly if this happens, you know, more than once, that may be a sign that that someone is taking things. It may also be a sign that this person has some issues with cognitive impairment, and maybe things aren't really missing, but it's important to distinguish that and see what's going on. Handyman exploitation. I see this a lot of time where you have, again, somebody in the neighborhood who is stopping by and suggesting that perhaps there's a gutter or some other minor repair that needs to happen. And then this leads to larger and larger repairs. I had a situation with a client who ended up having her entire house painted, a new, very excessive and expensive fence put up that she really didn't need. And we were able to stop it before she had literally she was paying someone to put a pool in her basement. So she was going to pay $100,000 to have a pool put in her basement, which, clearly she had some cognitive impairment issues, but you could see how in the beginning, these repairs, that line between what's necessary and not necessary isn't so clear. A lot of times people will get electronic requests. This, Dennis and Brian were talking about a little bit, electronic requests for your accounts or other financial information. So that's something that, you can be aware of. Scams, we talked about this a little bit before, but often you'll see a scam where they say you've won a prize, or that you have received an inheritance, but they just need some financial information from you in order to be able to collect that, or there's a small fee that they need in order to send you whatever you've won. Those things are a true sign that something's not quite right. Grandkids, anyone, but we often see it with grandkids requesting money over the phone. This is a very common scam, and this is a situation that a lot of people fall for all the time, because obviously, this is our family. We want to be able to help them, but you should always make that second call. Say, hold on a second, and call somebody on your cell phone and get a sense of whether this is real. Again, that's another one of those where they're preying on your sense of urgency and saying we have to do this right away. So why is it that people can't identify financial exploitation? Well, this is what these people do for a living. So you shouldn't really feel bad if you fall for these scams, because this is it's a business and people are very good at it, and they're good at making it look convincing. But often when people do get scammed, they don't want to talk about it. And then that really makes that situation worse. People are very embarrassed. And so often they can continue to be exploited for a longer period of time because they are embarrassed and they don't want people to know. When we're talking about someone that's close to them, when they're talking about a personal exploitation, often there really is a fear there. The individual is vulnerable. They may really need the help of that individual. They need that caregiver. And so often they're in a situation where they feel they have no choice but to give the individual what they want. Many of my cases deal with individuals who are socially isolated, and I'll talk about a case study in a minute, and we'll talk about, when there is no opportunity for others to notice, that's really where the perpetrators can exploit the situation. And that's why we want to make it so that we give every opportunity for others to find out, and I'll talk about ways to do that. Early cognitive impairment and a loss of executive function is a real common situation where you find exploitation, and perpetrators will see it. They will see that someone is starting to lose some of their functionality, and that's when they come in and they strike. That's when they build those relationships and really try to exploit them. So, technology is wonderful. We're having this program today through technology, but it really does make us more vulnerable in many ways. We are not going into the banks the way we used to, even before COVID. And as a result, we're not having those type of relationships. A lot of older adults have difficulty with the technology, have difficulty with using PINs. And as a result, they are more subject to abuse. Many older adults tend to carry a lot of cash or keep cash in their homes because they're not comfortable with the technology, or they're not comfortable using ATMs, or they're physically unable to get out to the bank. So as a result, they end up having that cash in the home, which again makes them very vulnerable. Password theft. Many people write down their passwords, they leave them there on their desk, they leave them on the refrigerator, and then anyone who comes into that home may have the opportunity to access that. So it's really important to not do that. Identity theft, Dennis and Brian talked about. Computer malware we talked about. Advertisements we talked about. And where we do have older adults who are doing some online banking, that does open up an opportunity to have individuals who are in the home be able to have access to those accounts. So we want to be real cautious of that. So I just want to take a minute here and before I get into my case study and talk about some of the normal changes that we do see in aging, because this is, as we age, we do find ourselves more subject to this type of exploitation, and there are many reasons for it. The main reason is the slowing of processing speed. So while we certainly have the intelligence that we had when we were younger, it's our processing that slows way down. 40 to 60% decline by age 80. And I know that I'm in my early 50s and I am already really feeling this. So I know that this is something that can impact us. So we really need to slow down. And of course, as Dennis and Brian said, that is exactly the opposite of what the perpetrators want to happen. They are trying to speed up. We need to do this now. I need this. It's urgent. Please help me right this second. And so that is really playing on this slow processing speed. The ability to multitask. So that could be another situation. You might have someone who is coming into your home and they're trying to distract you, trying to involve you in a couple of different things, so you may not realize what they're doing at the same time. I think that's what happened with that individual who was signing documents, is that there were two people there. They were trying to kind of distract him, and so he's signing things that he didn't realize he was signing. The ability to organize, plan, and carry out plans is something that declines as we age. So again, really feeding into this type of perpetration. The decline in what we call fluid intelligence, and that's the ability to hold multiple pieces of information at one time. And that's really key for financial decisions. So this is how, people say, I can't understand how, my mother, she's such an intelligent woman. How was she scammed? It's these ability to hold multiple pieces of information at one time that can really subject us to this. Our crystalline intelligence are, the things that we know, that remains intact or even increases, but the ability to judge trustworthiness and riskiness does decline even in normal aging. So we may not realize when somebody is trying to take advantage of us. We don't have that sixth sense that we would otherwise have when we were younger. So that's something that is obviously just right for this type of exploitation. Change in emotion and time perspective. So really focusing on the present and the positive emotions. And again, really opening us up to somebody making us feel good, telling us how good we look, telling us how smart we are, and that then using that as an ability to exploit. Mild cognitive impairment. So here we have, this is where we have someone who does not have dementia, but they're starting to have a little bit of interference with their daily life and their independent, functions. We find that the ability to manage finances is one of the first skills to decline. So we may see someone who, if we're looking at our loved one, who seems as if they are fine. They still recognize everything. They're able to do everything on their own. They're not having any impairment, but these type of financial decisions, they're more vulnerable to. And these individuals may end up moving into dementia or may not. So it's really important that we be aware of this either in ourselves or looking out for it in our family members. So I want to talk a little bit about a case that I've had. Unfortunately, I've had very many cases of financial exploitation of seniors, but one in particular that I'm working on now is really just devastating. Lovely woman, who fiercely independent, who did very well for herself, had a very lovely life for herself, but she was isolated. And as her mobility declined, she became more and more isolated and more dependent on others. She did not have any family in the area, but she did have family that she was fairly close to that was out of the area, that was out of state. But she had always been fiercely independent and did not share financial information with these individuals. She had previously had them as her power of attorney, but she didn't really share that information with them. And so she didn't have them on bank accounts. She didn't have them involved in her finances in any way. And we'll talk about how that's a possibility, how that's something that she could have done that would have really made a difference here. She was befriended by a younger male friend. There were actually two in her life who took advantage of her. One was a financial advisor and one was a waiter at a restaurant that she went to regularly. These individuals started paying more and more attention to her as she was starting to decline, and would tell her how wonderful it was to see her, how much they loved spending time with her, talk about how important she was to them, and really just strengthen that relationship. One of them told her a story about his wife who was ill, and would recount how he was caring caregiver, all the things that he did for her, and that someday after his wife passed on, he would provide that level of care to her, and that he would take care of her the way he was taking care of his wife. He, as I said, was a waiter at a restaurant. He told her that he wanted to open a business and that he requested a loan in order to do that. She gave him that loan of about $60,000. As I said, he promised to care for her. He offered to shop for her, and over time he did start shopping for her, and another individual started shopping for her, and it turned out that she had thousands and thousands of dollars of credit card debt every single month, things that were going on to her credit card. It appears that she went to a restaurant 3 times a day because there were charges that of each of the people were charging various restaurant charges. She would have this huge Costco bill, but she would also be going to restaurants every day. Well, clearly that wasn't happening, but that's what was happening with her credit card. And because she wasn't sharing her credit card statements with anyone, she wasn't allowing her family, who, although they were power of attorney at one point, she gave power of attorney to one of these individuals, one of her friends. The family was completely unaware that this was happening. So what could she have done? Which, by the way, it ended up that upwards of several $100,000, we think almost $1 million. We're in the middle of doing the forensic accounting on it. Almost $1 million of this woman's money was taken between the 3 individuals who were charging on her credit cards, just taking money out of her account and paying themselves for the services that they provided to her as her powers of attorney. So what could she have done to avoid this? Well, first of all, hiring the right professionals. Now, I will say that in this situation, one of the individuals who was taking advantage of her was a financial planner. He was not a certified financial planner, though. And one of the reasons that can be important is that the CFP board, the Certified Financial Planning Board, actually does investigations, and they actually will investigate and recover funds if you have a CFP who has been taking assets from you. So if you have somebody with a certification, that does provide you with an opportunity to be able to recover funds from them, or at least to have some place that you can make reports to. Working with an elder law attorney, I won't tell you that there has never been an elder law attorney who has stolen money. Unfortunately, right here in New Jersey, there has been a case of that. But most of the time, when you see individuals who are professionals who are taking assets from their clients, it tends to be individuals who have very marginal practices. They're not doing well, they're not successful, and so they end up putting themselves in a financial situation where they are then going to take funds from their individual. You're also, when you're working with an elder law attorney, you're going to have someone who has a little bit more knowledge and experience with the types of exploitation, and maybe can build some things into the power of attorney document, which we'll talk about in a second, which will help to avoid that type of exploitation. A daily money manager. We actually have one on the call here, I noticed. Daily money managers are people who have an expertise in working with seniors in helping them manage their bills and pay their expenses, rather than relying on a friend or a neighbor or someone who is doing it out of the kindness of their heart, and may very well be, but also may be helping themselves. So that's a professional who you might want to think about in terms of working with in that situation. Power of attorney. So many times people say to me, well, I don't have anybody that I trust to appoint as power of attorney. And that can be very difficult. But if you have someone who maybe you will trust in a situation, but you don't necessarily want them to have the document now, you don't want them to be able to act now, well, you might have your attorney be able to hold that document until the time that it's needed. You can name more than one person as power of attorney, and you might have a checks and balances system there. So you have one person who's maybe doing the bill paying, but then you have somebody else who is getting the statements and who is just checking that on a regular basis to make sure that that nothing is going wrong or nothing is being done that's inappropriate. We'll often put language in our power of attorney documents which mandate that the agent accounts every year or every 6 months to another individual, a neutral party. Maybe that's your attorney, maybe it's those relatives who are out of state. So, maybe you didn't want to burden that relative that's out of state with handling all of your business, but you could have them just checking in, and every 6 months or once a year as sort of a check on that individual who's doing your regular banking for you. Financial advisors have the ability to have you list something called a trusted contact. And that trusted contact is someone who they can go to if they have a concern about you or your capacity or your understanding or anything that's going on your account. So that would be a situation if you have somebody, again, who maybe you don't want them to do all of your banking, you don't want them to take over as power of attorney, but you name that individual to be able to just provide oversight if something starts to be not quite right. Look, we get some of those red warnings there. So that could be an important tool for you to use to try and protect yourself or a loved one. Other things to consider. If you really don't have anyone who you feel comfortable with, you might want to consider a trust. You might have a trust, and you might have someone that's called a trust protector. And again, that is a third party who is going to be checking up on your trustee on a semi-regular basis and would have the ability potentially to be able to remove that trustee if the trustee is not acting in your best interest. There's also something called a conservatorship, and that is where it's like a power of attorney, but the person is overseen by the courts. So that individual has to account annually for what they're doing, and the courts have the ability to be able to monitor what's happening with that individual. So again, it's a little bit more protective than just a power of attorney. What else can we do on kind of an everyday basis? Well, a lot a lot of your bills can be paid automatically. You can have automatic deposits so that you're not getting checks coming in the mail, and you can have automatic bill pay. And that's going to avoid, first of all, having to have somebody involved to a large extent, but also avoiding opportunities for theft. Again, we talked about statements being sent to a neutral person, to a third party, and setting up a separate account if you have someone who's helping with bill pay. So let's say you are working with a neighbor, or you're working with the daily money manager, and you have the bills that are going to be paid. Well, maybe you have just a bill paying account, which has a small amount of money in it. So that is the only account that that third party has access to, not your investment account where you may have a much larger sum of money. That's one way to kind of get some help, but limit the ability of that person. If you have people who are coming into your home, it's important to secure your home. You can have background checks done for anyone who's coming into your home. You can remove valuables if you have in-home help in order to, try and protect those things. Put things into your safe deposit box or into your safe so they're not lying around. And shredding identifying documentation. You have a helper coming in, a home health aide, or a cleaning person. You don't want to have your bank statements with your account numbers or your social security documents sitting around where they can easily be taken, or the numbers can be taken. And I guess that's it. Is that my last slide? Okay.
There. Thank you so much. That was really, I don't know why, but there's something very sobering about that information. Maybe it's because I'm getting older myself, that does not seem so theoretical anymore. That seems like this is something about learning about that cognitive decline. But thank you very much, Shanna. And I actually have a question for you, Shanna. It's a little bit for Brian and Dennis. And if anybody else has any questions, please, you can unmute yourself because there's enough. We don't have a huge number of people, or you can also add your question to the chat function too, and I can read that out. But I was wondering how you would talk to somebody who you think is being financially exploited. And because if this person's judgment is off, I mean, if she or he feels doesn't feel very confident in the judge, I mean, how do you get through to somebody like that?
Yeah, that's a very, very delicate question, because a lot of times, particularly if you're dealing with somebody who is in early stages of cognitive impairment or dementia, it's very easy to burn that relationship, right? To have them turn that questioning into them cutting you off, as opposed to the person who is the perpetrator. So I think that the best way to do that is to do it not in an accusatory way, but trying to do it in a questioning way, and trying to have as much hard evidence if you can. So if you, for instance, see something with bank statements, to actually have those statements in hand when you have that conversation, and ask them about certain transactions or certain things. It can, it's very tough, because it can backfire, and it may be, depending on where the individual is in their impairment, it may be too late to go to them. It may be something that you have to, work with professionals in terms of trying to deal with that issue. So it's a tough one. I don't know, Brian and Dennis, if you have anything you want to add on that.
Dennis? He's muted. He doesn't know. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
I had a romance case where I was talking about it before. $29,000. She sent $1,000 29 times. And some of these places like Western Union, they're supposed to warn the people. And it was a romance scam that most of these scams take place like quick thinking, they're on you immediately, but the romance scams stretch out longer and there's a bigger yield. The people steal more money in a romance scam than a regular one of these imposter scams. And
Plus,
we were
plus
able to
we
go
al-
to Western Union. There was a FTC filed a suit against them, and we were able to file on her behalf to try and recover some of the money. There was a $550 million settlement, but at the banks, even the banks are trained to talk to some of these people, and immediately they get defensive and this is my money. This is none of your business,
Yeah.
and they see the scam happening and they try to stop it, but they're almost like combative about it, They
Dennis.
don't trust the bankers.
Dennis, tell them about the lottery scam. The guy who didn't believe it.
Guy came in on a lottery scam. He won $680,000. He already was scammed 60 grand to try and get his money. And then I told him, I'm like, this is a scam. I had to bring in another investigator. And then he's like, I know this is a scam, but how do I get my money? I'm like, no, there is no money. This is a totally lottery scam. They had different people calling, males and females. They sent IDs. You have to pay customs tax. You have to pay United States tax. You have to pay an import tax. And before you know it, he already paid out 60 grand. You never pay any money to win a prize in New Jersey.
I think with the scams, one of the things that can help is showing those news reports or showing, bringing them to like your site so that they see the same situation. That can help with that type of situation because they may not realize that, oh, this is something that's happening to many different people. But the romance scams and the personal relationship exploitation, that's so much harder to deal with once it's already far into it, particularly where you have an individual with with cognitive impairment, because they're already hooked in. They already are feeling paranoid. Often part of the situation is that the perpetrator is poisoning the loved one against the other people, the people who are actually out to protect them. So if you try and stop it, or you try and warn them, they're saying, oh, well, he told me that you never liked him, or, that kind of situation. So it can be really, really difficult. You really almost have to deal with that up front by having powers of attorney in place, by having those second set of statements sending, by being a trusted contact, and by really warding off against that type of relationship. Although, we do get involved, and I know you as well get involved in these situations, being able to recover the funds on the back end, use of a guardianship. So there are ways to do it, but it can certainly be harder.
And related, a little bit related to that, but not for people with cognitive impairment. But I wonder about how, Brian and Dennis, you can talk to people about not falling for scams related to like the COVID-19 scams related to like supplements. I mean, how do you talk to people who will put their trust in like a disgraced minister who's selling silver colloidal supplements? But won't trust you or somebody like you or another, a trusted person.
Well, it's difficult because we find, and one of the things we talk about is people in your same circles that exploit you. Whether it be, we talk about it all the time, whether it be your church, your social groups, civic organizations, things like that. That people infiltrate these organizations, gain the trust of people, and then exploit them. And we try to say that, like, we get it. This person's a trusted person in your church. You've known them for years and all this stuff. But unfortunately, they're lying to you and they're tricking you. And it's very hard to break that. Well, I've known this person for so long. How would they do this to me? And a lot of times it's just, we have to bring the facts and have it right in their face. And it also a lot of times has to come from, it can't come from a loved one. It has to come from us, or it has to come from a third party that they can feel like, believe it or not, this is the craziest thing. Someone in uniform, someone with a governmental tie, something like that. Like, we've had people that come to us and I told my mother that this is a scam and blah, 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 but then we have to go and talk to her and reassure them. Their daughter was telling them it's a scam and she wasn't believing it. But for 2 seconds, we talked to her and they see the logo, they see this, our background in law enforcement and all this stuff. And immediately it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Meanwhile, the daughter told them the exact same thing that we told them, but she wasn't believing it. You know, a lot of times it's just, it takes someone from outside of a circle to get through to people to realize, oh yeah, that's not right. Why would they do that? Or why would he ask me for those things? Or no, that does seem odd now. So, you know, it's very difficult. It's again, by nature, we all want to be trusting. We all want to think that people are out there to help us. And, you know, you don't want to be that person that I don't trust anybody. Again, Dennis and I, coming from 25 years in law enforcement, we kind of have that, you know, I unfortunately still try to look at the good in everybody, but yeah, I've known so much bad in my career that I'm very skeptical about most things. So, you know, but we've built into that over years and years and years. So, but most people don't. Most people are very trusting, and that's hard. You know, it's very hard.
There's also the embarrassment portion of it. If the scam already happened, they don't want to tell their family. They don't want to tell the police. I'm so stupid. What did I do? I'm like, you're not stupid. You let down your guard for a minute. You know, let's try and get back on track here. But one lady, her son was an attorney, and she wouldn't report it to the police because her son dealt with the police in town. And, you know, it was a lot of money. And she never even made a report. I mean, she reported to Consumer Affairs, but she didn't make a police report.
And that's where sometimes we've been able to work with the individual. We have a social worker in our office and help them to protect themselves moving forward through the use of like a conservatorship or a trust, so that they can kind of avoid getting scammed any further, or having, you know, the exploitation go any further than it has.
Well, because then with aging, you just, I mean, it gets, I think I'd be terrified too, because it's not like you're gonna get any sharper. I mean, it's pretty certain what's gonna happen, you know, further down the road.
Right. Right. And that's why, you know, planning ahead, right? So putting those things in place to make sure that there is somebody who you're comfortable with, you can trust, who's going to be watching out for you, because it's just too easy for, you know, that person down the street to start to notice that you are starting to have some issues, and to decide, hey, I'm going to take advantage of that.
Wow. And this is just showing how important it is to get that census data out there, so we can figure out where is our aging population, where are the people we need to protect most, where do we need to have certain kinds of officers and certain programs. And yeah, so it's like, fill out that questionnaire and speak to as many of your friends and family as you can. Oh, Catalina, did you want to mention there's a social media promotion coming up?
Yes, so there's thank you so much for this. A couple of things I want to mention. There's a census initiative starting this Friday, March 1st through Sunday, May 1st through May 3rd, to promote the census on social media. So anybody that, you know, on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram, you know, send messages to your friends, or whomever, and post it hashtag 2020 census. That way the team on the census side will repost, will share, will retweet, will like, and keep the momentum going. Also, just a couple of things that I failed to mention, or I want to reiterate. On March 12th is when invitations to go on to the website or to call in to fill out your census went out. If you do not have your invitation or your ID number, you can still fill out your census survey. You can go online. It will ask you for an ID, but then it will tell you if you do not have your ID number, click here. The ID will only skip entering your address. That's the only thing that the ID is tagged to is linked to your address. Again, you can go on to census.gov, fill out your census online. You can also call. You can do it on paper, phone, or via online. Because of the COVID pandemic, our dates have changed. So originally, all census surveys had to be completed by July 31st. That date has been extended to October 31st. Okay. Field operations right now have been suspended because of that pandemic. Tentatively, we have a date of June 1st to go back in the field. But again, everything changes, so that is still a tentative date. Should that date, be the start date, that's when everybody, all of us will be out there in the community again, promoting census with presentations and everything like that. And that's also when enumerators, people that go knocking on doors, would start going to do that. But again, it's a tentative date of June 1st, but we'll see, how things are at that point. And I think that's it. Please tell your friends. There's another initiative from the State of New Jersey Secretary of State's office. Contact 5 people via phone tree to let them know, I filled out my census. You fill out your census, tell 5 more people, those people tell 5 more people, and we can get our rates up. You can go on to, again, census.gov and check every day how your community is doing with their self-response. Everything is really easy to do. Remember, it's safe, easy, and important. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Sure, no, thank you. And we'll be posting from the library about next weekend as many times as we can. And thank you so much, Shanna and Carolina and Brian and Dennis. This is really such a fantastic and fascinating panel. And also a special thanks to Kathy for bringing all these people together. This event couldn't have happened without her introducing me to Shanna and to the investigators who were speaking. So I didn't see any other questions pop up, but if anybody has anything they'd like to ask, please feel free to email me, and I can get an answer from you from one of the presenters. And also, please visit our website. We have several COVID-19 related pages that deal with both the medical issues, with financial assistance, with education and enrichment, and then general support, like emotional, mental support for people in certain situations, just for all of us, and then also for people in special situations who might be experiencing domestic violence or people who are dealing with addiction too. So we have a lot of resources out there because this is really an extraordinary time and we all need help. But thank you very much, everybody. And I am going to just, I guess, click leave end meeting now, which seems so final, but thank you so much, everybody. I'm so grateful. So appreciative. And I hope you all have a lovely day.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.